Hi there, and I just wanted to leave this really quick. This is going to be part of the Portugal Culture Immersion Program, probably in the business part where there's a sector there that we talk about specifically the business culture in Portugal. But I just had a video call with a client that really explained to me probably the difference between the relationship that US people have with the accountants and the Portuguese people have the accountants. Now, there are two things that unfortunately a lot of clients ask, and usually it's always difficult to answer. One is the recommendation for banks. Now, I worked for a bank for 18 years, and there's no good bank that I can recommend, not really. So it really depends on the specific manager of the branch. And if you don't have a good manager, I think regardless of the brand of the bank, you're always going to have a bad experience. The level of service is different. They take a lot of time. The compliance departments are through the roof. It's always very hard to approve anything. And so it's the relationship with banks here, it's always kind of a difficult one. And then they don't lend easily the money, even for businesses. I mean, I know that it's very easy in the US, for instance, to have businesses use money that the banks lend to them. It's really hard to get a loan from a bank here for a business. I mean, usually they only loan when you already don't need it, like at the end of the project, or when you already have clients, or when you built whatever part of the investment that you needed to build. So it's really different than in the US, where I guess the I don't have a personal experience, but what my client says that they loan money for everything. They're not really afraid to lend you money. In Portugal, it's the other way around. And the other difficult relationship is with the accountants. The relationship with the accountants here in Portugal is very different from the US because, first of all, there's a lot of filing obligations in Portugal. The law is really intricate, it's really complicated, it changes a lot every year, there's a lot of interpretations. Sometimes even tax branches where you file the obligations have some kind of understanding that is different from others. So it's really, really difficult. There's hundreds and thousands of filing obligations every month for companies. It's really a hard job. And so you won't really do the same thing that your accountant is doing in terms of supervision and control, because that's what he's there for. And if you're doing his job, then you're wasting that time and that money that you're paying him. And because things change so much, I don't even know a lot of accountants that can keep up with everything and with the changes in law, let alone, mere mortals that don't do that for a living. And so usually Portuguese have a very trusting relationship with their accountants. It's almost like they blindly trust them, because it's almost impossible to really control them or to supervise, or even know that what they're doing is correct or not, because we're just not that deep into the intricacies of the specific law. So I do have accountants that I recommend when I do create companies, but even then, I realize that the relationship that my clients have with them is kind of difficult. There's a resistance level there because in Portugal, what happens is that the Portuguese just again trust their accountant blindly, and they don't really control all that much. They send their invoices, they send their costs, but I will bet you that there's not a lot of, at least small and medium businesses that have the effective control of every single invoice, every single cost, every single receipt. And in fact, because not everything is classified in terms of accountancy the way we think that it is. So certain expenses are not accounted the same way. For us, all of it is expenses. In reality, for accountancy purposes, not everything counts 100%. And so it's really hard to keep track of what they're doing, because unless you're doing exactly what they're doing, and then you're wasting your time and money, because you're doubling the work that they're doing. It's useless time and money spent. And so because of this, Portuguese almost trust their accountants blindly and just do what they tell them to do. They can control, how the company's going, if there's a profit, if there's a loss. They control the amount of expenses, more or less, and the amount of income that is coming in. But again, sometimes not all costs, I remember, not all costs are considered the same in terms of accountancy. And so you won't even know. For you, it's just an Excel spreadsheet with expenses. For them is completely different. Some will count 100% for deduction as a write-off, some others won't. And with this call with this client that just realized why my expat clients are so afraid of the Portuguese accountants, because I say, we trust them almost blindly. It's because in the US, they move the money around. So they have, or at least it's what this client told me, they have access to the bank accounts of the clients. Be very aware, this is not what happens in Portugal, okay? The accountants do not have direct access to the bank accounts of the companies or the businesses. The business owner, the shareholders, the managers of the business are the ones with direct access to the bank accounts. Because this client just told me, I don't have a friend that hasn't been ripped off by their accountant in the US, because they just take the money and leave, they just take the money and go. Well, that is just not possible in Portugal because they don't have direct access. They don't need to have, you don't need to give them. They have no business having direct access to the bank accounts of the business itself. Okay. So I think this is a huge difference in the relationship between the business owner and the accountant. Okay. This probably justifies the difference in relationship with the accountants that the Portuguese have, which is more trusting because, they really can't take the money away from us if they do any mistakes, which they will make any mistakes, but it's fine because they really just there's going to be fines, of course, but it's not like they have access to the bank accounts and they just can clean off the bank accounts. That just doesn't happen. Okay. And I wanted to leave this here because I think this is really important to have as a difference.